Good morning. Hi, I hope you can all find a seat down here. We've got plenty of room. Welcome to this Sunday morning worship service at the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. I'm Elaine Peters, a worship associate. In this congregation, we create loving religious community, encourage spiritual growth, and help to build a more just and joyful world. On Sunday mornings, we gather in worship to restore the balance of our spirits, to celebrate the joys of life, and to find the strength to meet its sorrows. Worship is a time when we consider what is worthy, what brings us meaning and purpose as we seek to live our values. The topic we consider today is reinterpreting and rethinking rituals and rosaries. Our guest ministerial candidate is Cassandra Montenegro, who is a UU ministerial candidate at Harvard Divinity School, and someone who has spoken at Shelter Rock for the past several times. Our soloist today is Sarah Moulton Foe. Now, let's take a moment to center ourselves as we begin our worship together with the music of Frederick Mampu, played by Matthew Ricketts. Thank you. Jim Peters is a worship associate also, and we had wet matches. Each Sunday, we light the chalice of our religious heritage. We do this for our ancestors who taught us through their diverse religious traditions and by their actions for justice and hope. We do this for our children who are learning the traditions we teach, and who learn more from our actions than from our words. We do this for ourselves so that we are inspired to remember our beginnings, reflect on who we are now, and spread our wings as we understand what we seek to become.
Nada te turbe. Nada te turbe, nada te espante. Quien a Dios tiene, nada le
Please rise in body or spirit as you are comfortable for the words of affirmation, which are on the screen, and then we'll sing the song. And then we'll sing the song of affirmation. And finally, light the candle of our religious, heritage. Got it. Well, we have a strong religious heritage and a strong candle now. And when we'll sing, please do wear a mask to sing when we do our song of affirmation. The words now. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need. This do we affirm and covenant with each other. To serve human need. Each Sunday, we take a special collection to support a nonprofit group that expressly serves human need. During July and August, contributions support school supplies for local children whose families can't afford to give them the school supplies they need. Each summer, Shelter Rock members and friends help provide school supplies for children in need in the village of Hempstead. The supplies are distributed in late August by Reverend Benjamin of the ABBA Leadership Center. Members of the Social Justice Committee will use the funds from our Sunday collections to purchase the supplies and deliver them to Reverend Benjamin in time for their distribution. Make a contribution on the website, or if you are on site, the donations box is to the right as you leave the sanctuary. In these days, when compassion fatigue is a real thing, make this congregation a wellspring of empathy that pours forth generosity like an ever-flowing stream.
Elaine, thank you so much for the beautiful welcome and for all the welcomes I've received this morning thus far and over the last few months, and I think over a year and a half since I've been preaching here virtually. Today is my first time in person, full embodied, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all. I loved the way that you read the chalice lighting, which your congregation has so lovingly put together. I felt the ritual, I felt the community. If a ritual is a series of acts that we engage in either within our own family nucleus, within our own self, and within our wider community, then I could think of no better ritual more beautifully done than this ritual of the chalice lighting that we've adopted as Unitarians as part of our faith, and that you really seem to have deepened into as a congregation. So I'm taking a risk today. I took a risk last fall preaching on Teresa of Avila. I'm a little scared of maybe I should have just stuck with the birds again, but We're going into unknown territory for me as a Unitarian Universalist ministerial candidate by preaching on a personal religious practice that was passed on within my family through my maternal grandmother, who passed this January, and who I feel here with me today. I'm holding her rosary, one of them, because she had several. And I just want to open with thanking you all again. One of the sources that I draw from, we talk about the sources of our faith, right? And in seminary or in divinity school, you're exposed to a lot of different sources. A deepening into my own ancestral heritage and the practices of that heritage was not something that I would have expected, but seems to be following me along the way. Today's service was inspired in part by the words of biblical scholar Micah Kiel. And what Dr. Kiel does is, in this one book, Apocalyptic Ecology, which was referenced in today's blurb, he employs several strategies to properly understand the book of Revelation and what an apocalyptic ecology is. We won't really be exploring apocalyptic ecology here today, but this question of this quote that he has, it really struck me. Rather than jettison, we must re-examine and rethink those traditions that have formed us. And what does that look like in our UU context, in our homes, with our partners, our extended families, multi-faith families, multi-faith homes? And what does it look like in our congregations? So today's first reading, or today's reading, main reading, is something else that I didn't expect that I would lift into a UU context. A series of tweets by a Catholic priest. And I was first exposed to these tweets in community with some queer Catholics at the Divinity School. And it really started helping me shift the way that I was thinking about my grandmother's own practice and what relationship I might have with it. So these are a series of tweets by Father James Martin. Here's a confession. As a boy, I never learned the right way to pray the Rosary, meaning the mysteries and the other traditional prayers associated with it. It was given to me in a little black plastic case with a tiny fold-out booklet. But not having gone to Catholic school or grown up in a family that prayed the Rosary, after I lost the booklet, I just prayed it in my own way, which was very simple. Just Hail Marys and Our Fathers, eventually with the Apostles' Creed, since I knew that from Mass. Sometimes I would wake up and forget about my Rosary, and it would be left behind in the tangled sheets. My mother would often warn me that one day it would fall out of the sheets and land on the floor, and she didn't want to run over it with the vacuum cleaner. Well, one day it did, and she did. When I came home from school, it was on my bedpost, missing a few beads after its battle with our old Hoover vacuum. As you can see, I told you, she said, I've prayed with this Rosary and with many others for years, but in my own way. Once, in pilgrimage to Lourdes, I was asked to lead the Rosary on the plain in front of 300 pilgrims. I warned them I don't do it the right way. They insisted, so I started. At one point they said, "You forgot to announce the mysteries." I confessed I wasn't able to remember them. I pray with them when I have a guide, but they're very hard to memorize. "It's Wednesday," someone shouted. "That doesn't help," I said. And on the way home, they asked another Jesuit, my friend Brian Frayne, and he knew them all. I'm still a little embarrassed that I can't remember all the mysteries or the official way to pray it. no matter how many booklets I buy. And believe me, I've tried over these past 50 years or so, but I'm not embarrassed to say I pray the rosary often, sometimes a few times a day, in my own way, now and at the hour of our death.
Now that the sun hath veiled his light, and bid the world good night, to the soft bed, to the soft bed, my body I dispose, but where shall my soul repose? Dear God, even in thy arms, and can there be any so sweet security? Can there be any so sweet security? Then to thy rest, O my soul. Then to thy rest, O my soul, and sing, praise the mercy that prolongs thy days, and sing, praise the mercy that prolongs thy days. Hallelujah, hallelujah,
When I first began identifying as a Unitarian Universalist over 8 years ago, I was all about the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, combined with the mystery and wonder and the many sources of our faith. What I didn't know then is that this journey into a faith tradition that so many of us call our own has brought me further into a faith tradition that I ran from for many years. As I ran for a host of reasons: patriarchy, homophobia, hypocrisy, and censure. In an effort to make peace with both and to honor my ancestors, I'm here today. Many Unitarian Universalist churches are peppered with former Catholics. It's something I know anecdotally, especially after I began writing and preaching on my multi-faith journey within this faith and speaking to others about it. Some of you all here too. What I haven't really spoken of when it comes to my Catholic upbringing, and I even struggle to say faith, is the import of ritual to me, especially rituals that tie me to family. In my case, the ritual of the Rosary. Prayer beads are found in a variety of other faith traditions and can be looked at historically within, I think Hinduism is probably the earliest pictorial representation that we have of some sort of prayer bead. They are used to calm the mind through repeated prayers, the beads serving as tactile markers for counting. And as we are humans living in a material world, that tactility, that repetition can mean something. Whether we know its source or whether its meaning is shifted, it's there for many of us. Yet in our humanity, there is an opportunity to re-engage with the world and its traditions, the traditions that have brought us here, that have sustained and yes, at times even hurt us, with new eyes and open hearts. As we learned from Father Martin, there are different ways to pray the Rosary. This gentle and loving message of openness and informed experimentation is something that freed me, and I believe my family. My grandmother Mela was the only person of her generation in my immediate family who I believe was able to see, accept, and meet me fully in the more liberal parts of my identity. I never got a chance to come out as queer or introduce her to my partner, and I wish I had. I wish I had given her the chance to see more of me. But I did get to tell her that I found a faith tradition where I could preach and write openly and explore. I did get to tell her that this faith journey would take me all the way to conferences, general assemblies across the United States, and to study at Harvard Divinity School in Boston, the city she first emigrated to in her exile. And even though it was years after we would attend our last Christmas Eve Mass together at her parish, where I was baptized, I did get to pray the Rosary with her at her bedside. I used to think that I first learned about the Rosary in first grade from a nun in the Catholic school I attended for a brief while. Sister Rose taught us about the apparition of the Virgin of Fatima, Portugal, to young children and who had entrusted them with these prayers. However, that was kind of book knowledge. What I first learned, and then continually have learned, of the Rosary has been through observation, through practice, through ritual, through my grandmother. The Rosary, it was her ritual that she prayed almost every day of her life without fail. I mean, for as long as I knew her. I never asked her who taught Mela this practice, but I know she did it with her mother, Ana Lucia, who I call my abuelita Ita, at the kitchen table, prayer books or prayer guides in hand, and wooden or metal or plastic beads in the other. I remember one set even smelled like roses. But it still stays with me. This practice, who did she learn it from? This daily contemplative practice. Was it from her mother? Was it from friends in her young Catholic women's group in Cuba? And when did she begin that practice? Was it after her exile, when she was here alone with her husband and her 2 children, away from family? Or was it years after, when there was a resurgence of the practice in the late 20th century due to an interest taken by Pope John Paul II, a religious leader that she highly respected? I used to think that amidst the trauma and pain and stressors of exile, the Rosary was my grandmother's mode of quieting her mind, of centering herself, of connecting with her God and the figure of the Virgin Mary. Through stories about some of the women in my partner's own family, I learned that my grandmother's practice was something not uncommon in Latin American Catholic female practices. It was years later that she could no longer read this guide, this book, this guide. And I had made a blown-up version for her in large fonts, and I put it in a binder so she could read it. But she was really excited about it, but she wasn't that interested. There was something about the tactility of the memory of holding one, holding the other in her hands, that was really, really important to her. And the last time that I prayed the Rosary with her, which really, I don't think before last December, I had ever really taken the time to sit with her through like a whole practice. It is long. And if it had brought up so many hurts that I had experienced over the years as a queer Catholic woman, as a queer woman who no longer really identified as Catholic. A few days after when I would really pray the Rosary with her, her hand in mine, prayers amidst the beeping in the hospital, I would return to Cambridge, and a few days after that, she would be sent home in hospice. And I had learned that my mother, who she herself had resisted saying the Rosary for many years, said it at my grandmother's side to give her peace, it bringing peace, I believe, to them both in their relationship. After my grandmother died, my partner, who is a self-identified atheist, offered to pray it with me, knowing that it would bring me solace in my grandmother's memory. While UUism gave me an affirming space for my queerness, as a Unitarian Universalist, I'll be quite honest, it's been a struggle knowing how I can be myself about my Catholicism, respectfully in a way that doesn't harm or injure or trigger others who've been hurt by that tradition or by others. And as someone on the ordination track, it's been a different kind of sheen and responsibility for those same reasons. When I bring up my journey with the Catholic faith, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's through your congregation that gave me the opportunity to do so, and I thank you for that. Rethinking and reimagining Catholic and other rituals from my ancestors, for me, is an ongoing process. It's one that's allowed me to interrogate and question and still very much love what formed and informed the beginnings of my journey as a person of faith in this life. And it's my faith in the principles and the people of Unitarian Universalism that keeps me asking questions and not settling for the status quo. I can be queer and UU. A friend of mine identifies as queer Catholic. Can I be a Catholic UU? I don't know. Guess what I ask you now, and I'll ask you again later in the service, as you've heard this story about the personal religious practices in my family. What are the rituals and traditions that you have discovered on your ancestral journey thus far? Is it something you want to learn about, connect about? When I ask that question, like, how does it feel in your body? Do you just want to shut it down? Like, I can't go there. That is too live, or it's been dormant, and I'd like to have a nice Sunday. But if you feel like there might be a space for this exploration, what would it look to try them out? Maybe lighting prayers on a Friday evening. What would it look like to pray together in a group with your own partner? Or does that feel like something that doesn't feel right for you? The word prayer is activating in and of itself. That's not a word that you use. How does it feel to connect with your ancestors in a way that might feel right for you to do so? What I know about myself is that when I pray my rosary, it is both my grandmother's and it is mine. And I thank you for allowing me to share that with you today. Our closing hymn is Spirit of Life, and I chose this hymn because in many congregations, this is a ritual practice. It is sung in community, it is elevated, and it has such an import for the faith and formation of that congregation.
If you would like to rise in spirit or body to sing Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, and if you are singing, please wear a mask.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in my hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Familia, as we make our way back into the hubbub and complications and beauty of our lives, I invite you to think on what it means for your heart to re-engage religious and spiritual practices that you grew up with, that meant something to your ancestors and might mean something to us in our communities. What are those rituals and traditions you've discovered on your ancestral journey thus far? Learn about them, try them. Pray in a group or alone, or don't pray at all. But connect with your ancestors as if it feels like something that feels right for you to do, even though that tug may be hard. There might just be something there for you to look into. Amor y bendiciones a todos. May you go in peace.
Now we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out.